my watch, so it's good news for you guys. I'm going to put this up here. We've heard about a lot of challenging issues this morning, and it's somewhat daunting to come up and after so many just really elegant and intelligent speakers. To start out, I'd like to ask us just for 30 seconds to bow our heads in prayer. Lord, our nation faces enormous problems, but we've had your hand on us throughout our history. Help turn us back to you. Help us find our path. Help us find your path for us. Please don't let the pruning be too hard, and allow us to move forward under your guidance. In Jesus' name we pray. Amen. I really want to thank Shane for putting this event together. It's important that people, particularly in Iowa, where you do make a real difference for the rest of us by choosing the people who are going to be president. You get to go one-on-one and vet presidential candidates for the rest of us. And that is incredible. And what's really incredible is that you take it so seriously, that you don't sit there and take this, like so many people do around the country, a light responsibility. In Iowa, you take the time to try to get it right. And so up front, I want to say thank you. Each of us knows that we're living in perhaps the most perilous time in the last 150 years. And it's not just ISIS and the Russians reemerging and the Chinese and the 19 trillion, or as Mike Ferris rightly said, 150 trillion in debt that we really have in this country. It's not the regulatory overburden. It's not all of those challenges, because those are all handleable. It's that there's this gnawing sense in America right now that something's wrong. Something's gone off the rails. And what are we going to do about it? And what is that? We have the news full of head-scratching events where the government and some of our people seem to have completely lost their moorings. And that's because they have. America is the greatest nation to ever have existed in the history of the world. When I was in junior high school in Southern California, my social studies teacher said, there's no American culture because we're a melting pot. She was wrong. There is an American culture and a uniquely American DNA that makes us who we are. It is that exceptionalism that's under attack. The American DNA was identified by Thomas Jefferson and his band of brothers in 1776 in Philadelphia, when he wrote and they signed the Declaration of Independence, which begins using the following: "We hold these truths to be self-evident, that all men are created equal, and that they are endowed by their Creator with certain inalienable rights. Among these are life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. That to secure these rights, governments are instituted among men, deriving their just powers from the consent of the governed." These 55 words define the DNA of America, the very essence of what has made our nation the greatest that the earth has ever seen. And it is these 55 words that have come under unrelenting attack as those who despise liberty seek to redefine America by challenging our nation's genetic code. After all, you can't fundamentally transform something without changing its DNA. What do they find so offensive? How about everything? We hold these truths, not opinions, loosely held beliefs, or even facts. The founders left no doubt that the definition of individual freedom is an absolute truth. Truths that are self-evident. Everyone knows this without any debate. That all men are created equal, created, not formed, not the result of random chemical actions in a primordial ooze. No, created. That they are endowed by their Creator with certain inalienable rights. Yes, our nation was founded with the recognition that God Himself is the font of our rights, which cannot be stripped away. That among these are life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. No guarantees on the happiness part. the capacity to have the opportunity to pursue your dreams. And life and liberty, yes, life and liberty are core to the American ideal. That to secure these rights, governments are instituted among men, deriving their just powers from the consent of the governed. Never, ever, ever let anyone tell you that you should not fight for freedom and to defend your inalienable rights for any reason. The entire moral justification for the United States government is to secure these rights, and the just powers are gained from your consent and no one else's. Why is this important? It's important because when someone tries to exclude God from the public square, they're denying the only source of our individual liberties. Neither people nor the government they institute can convey freedoms to others. Government, by its very design, is a limiter of freedom. And the uniquely American concept is that government is only constrained by the recognition that our rights are derived from God. Our founders lived at a time when the divine right of kings was a popular justification for monarchy. The founders made certain that instead, every person is treated as a king with their own rights, instead of mere chattel depending upon their government masters to tell them what they can do. Without the essential element that American citizens' rights come straight from the Almighty, there are no rights at all. And we see this reality playing out more and more every single day. The Obama administration has even gone so far in speeches to remove the words by their creator from the official readings of the Declaration of Independence, later claiming it was a slip up my eye. And the results of this denial of what is called self-evident is that we have seen the Obama administration and incredibly the Democrats in the Senate engaging in wholesale war on the First Amendment. And for those of you paying attention, most of them don't seem to like the second one much either. That's not hyperbole. Last Congress, Harry Reid led a drive to repeal the First Amendment, replacing it with language that would allow the federal government control over political speech. In fact, 49 Senate Democrats signed on to the repeal and replace of the First Amendment, and because of the efforts of Senator Cruz, Senator Lee, and a lot of other patriots, they were defeated. Look it up if you don't believe me. It's astonishing. A full frontal assault on the fundamental freedom of political expression. And that's not even getting into the various other things they've done. The Obama administration using the IRS to go after political groups who he doesn't agree with, and no one is prosecuted. We have seen the Obama Justice Department go after reporters who they don't agree with, including breaking into the home of a Washington Times reporter who was reporting on some bad deeds at the TSA, and they had an early morning raid, federal officers breaking down the door, stealing her notes so they could find out who the whistleblowers were within TSA. It happened 2 years ago. Somehow in Iowa, we don't know about it. That's what's happening in Washington, D.C. We've seen the FCC attempt on multiple occasions to regulate the internet so they can control this dangerous threat to government-controlled thought. And the list goes on and on and on. Religious liberties have never been any more in peril. When an Oregon baker may lose their property because they refuse to participate in a celebration of sin as defined by their religious beliefs, freedom of conscience is lost. Freedom of religion is lost. When the federal government actually sues the Little Sisters of the Poor, literally sues the Little Sisters of the Poor, to force them to provide abortions and birth control against their religious convictions. The assault on basic freedoms is real. It's a real and present danger. But what is even more distressing is that the nation as a whole is not rising up and denouncing these obvious breaches of our most basic liberties. Because the nature of politicians is to seek to increase their power. And by extension, that means the power of government. And those power grabs always come at the extent of your rights. They always come at the extent of your rights. Yet we hear the constant noise that God has no place in government or in politics. The disintegration of freedom in our nation is exactly why God has to be in the public square. Because without God and the rights he conveys, we are sheep at the mercy of wolves. America needs to be reminded where our liberties come from and inspired to hold them dear. If we fail to elect a leader who does that, then every other battle will eventually be lost. The fundamental question facing voters in the upcoming election is, what is America going to be going forward? Will we be a nation of laws where the consent of the governed reigns, or a nation of men who dole out bite-sized freedoms so long as they're allowed to rule? The very DNA of our nation is at stake on virtually every front, and the decisions you make will determine which direction we go. Thank you for gathering here today to do a great service to the rest of the nation. It really is humbling to be here. You know, you get the chance to take the measure of the men and women who are seeking to lead our nation. You get to look them in the eye. And when you hear all the rhetoric from the many good and earnest people who are asking you to hire them to lead this nation, please ask yourself, what is this person's personal plumb line? How do they make decisions? Who do they rely upon? Are they going to share the convictions of our founding fathers that all men are created equal, endowed by our Creator with certain inalienable rights, or not? Or are they going to lead based upon a different set of personal rules that are only accountable to the latest politically correct Twitter mob? One of the great myths being pushed by the left is that God has no place in politics, and that the notion of separation in church and state means that politicians and voters should leave their beliefs at home. No one leaves their beliefs at home. It's the great lie. Everybody takes their beliefs with them. And certainly, no one can be entrusted with an America that needs both an economic and spiritual revival without having a firm foundation, because otherwise they will surely fail. Our parents and grandparents left us with a great country that now faces an existential threat, greater than Hitler and Hirohito. It is a threat to the very essence of who we are and the freedoms that still make us the envy of the world. Please choose wisely and give us a candidate who not only mouths the words of freedom, but understands at his or her core, without God-given liberty, it's all lost. America would be just another backwater swamp ruled by a greedy tin pot dictator. Because we cannot afford another president who doesn't get that America is great because our liberties are derived from our Creator. Freedom is worth fighting for. Thank you for being here on the front lines in Iowa. Send us somebody worthy and capable of making America great again. I'm Rick Manning, and I need to get a better bio because I was listening to everybody else's bio, and geez, I need to do some more creative writing.
From a perspective of having to read it, it was shorter. So anybody have questions for Rick?
Thank you very much. I just have a question about taking back liberty locally. You know, I became aware, I'm a chicken raiser, and I got into the big fight with my local little tiny town about property rights. And, you know, what I came away learning was that every time they pass an ordinance, the local governments have no understanding that they too are restrained by the Constitution and about the principles of liberty. How do we, I tried, but what's your proposal to deal with that? I mean, I think we have to take back liberty locally. Because
I agree, and I agree 100%. In 2000, I had an epiphany moment. I was mowing my lawn. I ran my foot over a lawnmower. As I'm laying down the bottom of the hill at 40 years old or so, I said, you know, what's going on? And I made a decision that I was going to run for local office, even though I promised my wife that I never would. And she wasn't very happy, and she voted against me, actually. But having said that, you know, a small town of about 3,500. not in the Chesapeake Bay, but next to it, Chesapeake Beach. And I won by 6 votes. And I discovered that, yes, that's exactly the case. There's a general sense that, you know, whoever's there yelling gets the goodies, and, you know, they get the little property extensions that help them out, and the right-of-ways that help them out. And many people use local government to promote their businesses and the like as a means to kind of, well, truthfully, get a competitive advantage. Local government's the one you can impact. Go to your town council meetings. You know, run for office. Be the thorn in the side. Because trust me, I knew who the 10 people in Chesapeake Beach were who I needed to keep happy. Be one of those people. You know, make it your business to make it your local government's business to be a limited government and to not interject itself into your lives in so many different ways. So the way to do it is involvement. The way to do it is and if they make you mad, virtually every member of Congress ran for Congress because they got mad at somebody at local government. Local government said, you can't use your ranch the way we want to, you have to sell your eggs the way we want to. They tried to tell you everything you could do on your land, and the person said, enough is enough, I'm not dealing with it anymore, I'm getting involved. And they run for, it's generally not because they you know, attended a Principal John Locke seminar. It's because they sat there and dealt with government, they didn't like what they saw, and they said, I'm going to change this. Be that person. Local government has to listen to you because they need you. So that's how I would answer the question. I hope that's sufficient.
Okay, one last question.
Well, I want to set straight what my worldview is. I am a believer in the resurrection of Jesus Christ, okay? But my question is, how is it planned to address the changing religious demographic in the United States? How does that, if there's an answer to that question?
Well, government has no business dealing with the changing religious demographic in America. That's a question of whether or not now I'm going to speak from not from an Americans for Limited Government point of view, I'm going to speak from a Christian view. Somebody who, my wife's ringtone is a song called Lift Up Your Face, which is by Third Day and is an evangelical song, okay? So I'm going to speak from that perspective. There is a cultural war. There's a war for the hearts and minds, but it's the same war that's been going on since Jesus Christ went to the cross. It's a war that we have to fight. It's a war we have to fight with love. It's a war we have to fight with directness. It's a war we have to fight with truth. Not everybody's going to accept that. But that's not the government's job. That's our job. The government's job is to get out of the way. The government's job is not to pick winners and losers from a religious perspective, where a Muslim who drives a truck can sue the trucking company because they don't want to drive alcohol and get a bunch of money from the federal government, and an Oregon baker who's a Christian baker doesn't want to bake a cake for somebody, ends up losing their business. That's government picking winners and losers between religious entities, and it's wrong. There is no place for that. That's what the First Amendment's about, and we don't need the government to tell us about our faith. We know about our faith, and if the people choose a Christian worldview, if they choose to follow Jesus Christ, who went to a cross to die for their sins, then that is their business and that's their eternal future. If they choose not to, then those consequences are there as well. But that's not the government's job, and it is not the job that I want any elected official, no matter how smart they are, to do anything about. Leave that to me. Leave that to me talking to my neighbors. Leave that to you. Leave that to you talking to your neighbors. And on that, that's why the DNA is so important, because if you don't believe in the Creator God, you do not have freedom, and if you do not have freedom, none of this matters. We're all just subjects of a king.
Thank you so much.